This is my final essay presentation, and for this project, I'm going to be addressing some problems that are somewhat tied to Session 4, Biased in Education. And in that session, we addressed how curriculum and tests may be biased against certain ethnicities and may favor white students because the material is more culturally familiar, and that's just kind of the norm in our culture. And the other topic that I kind of loosely address is related to language barriers, which we covered in Session 12, Education in South America. One of the biggest issues in education today is achievement gaps, and these are performance gaps in certain groups, usually separated by ethnicity or socioeconomic standing, that consistently perform at a lower level than their counterparts. These are usually students of color or English language learners, which there's a lot of overlap there. So, yeah, that's kind of what we're dealing with here. And much of the goal in current education policy is to close these gaps, to kind of provide equity and opportunity to more diverse set of demographics, and closure of the gaps. It's kind of estimated that it'll benefit our society in a number of different ways, and I hope to expand on that in my essay. In terms of like economic growth, which leads to better employment rates, and with education, especially in urban settings, that leads to reduced costs in corrections and incarceration. A lot of policymakers in the education sphere kind of agree that the most effective remedy for closing achievement gaps right now is to kind of stop them before they happen, and to address that with early childhood education, or education that's kind of birth through 4, as kind of strange as that sounds. And I kind of did some initial poking around at the National Education Association website, and there was a lot of information to support this assertion. Early childhood education is based off science that kind of explains that in the first years of a child's life, 0 to 3, while the brain is forming, it's a kind of a vital point in shaping how children learn. Research shows that children who attend high-quality pre-kindergarten programs are less likely to drop out of school, repeat grades, need special education, or get in trouble with the law later on. These quality programs play a critical role in putting a child on the path to success in school and in life. So every child, who needs it can have access to these programs, not just rich people that can afford to pay. The NEA advocates for free public pre-kindergarten for disadvantaged 3 to 4-year-olds, and increased funding support from both federal and state governments, because it's kind of shown to be able to pay for itself if the initial investment is made. They kind of cite a study conducted by the Economic Policy Institute, which claims that investments in programs like these have an eventual benefit to cost ratio of 8 to 1. One of the best known studies regarding this issue is the Perry Preschool Study, which began in the early to mid-60s and continued for about 40 years. And basically they split up a group of kids. One group was given high-quality preschool and the other was not. And they were examined over the years and finally examined when they all reached the age of 40. And individuals who received preschooling had higher earnings, committed fewer crimes, more likely to gain and retain employment, and graduate high school. So with all that kind of background information, I think that I'm going to focus the fake money given to us for this assignment on these issues. And so I think more specifically, I plan to invest in the development of early childhood education programs in states with the worst achievement gaps. Wisconsin is actually the worst in the nation. So, in accordance with the rules of the assignment, I'll likely omit them, and or us, I guess, and kind of take a look at what it might cost to, you know, develop some programs in some other states, or in some of the states. I've looked at Minnesota, and it's fairly expensive. Their early childhood program costs about $40 million a year, so that wouldn't go terribly far. So another possibility I might look into is creating grant programs to encourage and foster innovations in areas that contribute to closing achievement gaps and that reinforce early childhood learning. I think the main focus here is going to be, giving teachers and administrators the resources they need to teach, training that they'll need, and the resources to teach students who are English language learners or who come from low-income families. I think that we really have to concentrate on, especially reading. English language learners kind of suffer from this, and low-income students, often have the most trouble reading, and the kind of goal is by second or third grade. There's kind of this saying in the education policy world where learning takes place much more effectively and quicker when students stop learning to read and they start reading to learn. So that's kind of going to be the focus. And any 100 million doesn't go very far in terms of education. I think in Wisconsin we spend $4.5 billion per year on education. So 100 million is kind of a drop in the bucket at that point. And because it doesn't go very far, I think that incentivizing the development of new ideas, while it could be fruitless, maybe you invest all this money, it doesn't go anywhere. That's a possibility, but in this case, I think, if you're successful, it may have the best return on investment. It would kind of be an investment in new ideas, and if good ideas come from that, and if programs and curriculum are found to be more effective and innovative than current methods that we're using, that idea can be replicated, with somebody else's money, and pay large dividends in addressing this really important issue.